Hey everyone, thanks so much for coming. This is the Enhancing IT Pro and Developer Productivity with New Improvements to Advanced Tools in Windows session. My name is Kayla Cinnamon. I'm a Senior Product Manager here at Microsoft, formerly delivering Windows Terminal, and now I work on delivering Microsoft PowerToys. I'm here with my friend Craig.
Hi, my name is Craig Lowen. I'm also a Senior Product Manager at Microsoft, working on the same team as Kayla. I work on the Windows subsystem for Linux, and our team's goal is really to make developing on the Windows OS as awesome as it can be. And that's really what we want to show you today, is a lot of the improvements that we've made targeted towards developers and IT pros.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got a lot of live demos and a lot of content that we want to show, but we're really focusing on 4 main pillars, and that is Windows, where we're going to show you some things we've added to the OS to help you be more productive. We've also got PowerToys, which is a whole set of utilities to give you even more power on Windows itself. And then we've got some WSL, which is Windows Subsystem for Linux, as well as some Windows Terminal updates. And then, of course, there's Winget, which is the Windows Package Manager. And we're going to show you how you can use all of these tools to just get that performance boost, get more productivity, and just be more successful in your day-to-day jobs. So to frame how we're going to go through this, because there's a lot, we're going to talk about just the developer lifecycle. So we're going to start with onboarding and getting your machine set up, and talking about a bunch of tools and improvements made to those tools to help make onboarding a little bit easier. And then we'll talk about the inner loop, where you're doing your coding, and the outer loop as well, which is everything else that isn't coding, but it's still part of the job. So I think to start, we're going to just jump into some live demos and just show off some stuff that makes onboarding a little bit easier. And we used to be office mates, but now that we're not, this is going to be a little bit more of a share session of here's how I use my setup, here's how Craig uses his, and how we are productive as people who work on Windows.
For sure.
All right, so let's switch over to my desktop itself. And first thing that I would love to talk about is DevDrive. So for those who aren't aware, DevDrive is a new drive that we've delivered particularly for development that's going to give you a performance boost because it's on REFS, the resilient file system, in comparison to NTFS, which is what the C drive is on. So with REFS, as well as a performance mode for Defender, you're going to get a performance boost when your code and your repositories are in a dev drive. And you can create one by going to the settings page and then clicking for developers, and then at the bottom you can see where all your dev drives live. And you're just going to get a lot of speed boosts, most particularly in I/O scenarios, so things like NPM or cloning. That's where you're going to see those performance improvements. So that's DevDrive. Highly recommend getting your code set up there. And we've also got some fun improvements made to DevDrive we'll show in a little bit. And then the other thing I just want to start us off with is Winget. So if you aren't familiar, Winget is our Windows Package Manager. And you can see here, I don't have Git installed, which is kind of the main thing that I use.
Embarrassing.
Embarrassing. So I'm going to just install it here on stage using Winget. So Winget's package repository is open source on GitHub, as well as its CLI. So if you want to contribute or add packages to it, you can. And this is just something that comes with Windows, and it's easy to help get your packages set up and get started with your day. And we do have a lot of other Winget features we want to show, and I could talk about them while this installs, because there's a reason why I don't have Git right now that we could talk about. But for now, while this runs, I'm going to talk about some other things that come with Winget, and that is Winget configuration. So recently, we announced Winget configuration, which uses YAML files to get your machine into a desired state. So it's built on DSC, or desired state configuration, and you can create a YAML file to say, hey, I want these things installed, I want these Windows settings, I want these app settings, and then I can get started right away. So since I work on PowerToys, one thing that we deliver with PowerToys in the open source repo is a .configurations folder, which includes all of the Winget configuration files that you could need to get started contributing to PowerToys. So if I open one of these, which I have already open in VS Code, we could take a look at what this is going to do. So it's going to make sure that developer mode is enabled. It's also going to install Visual Studio 2022 Enterprise. And it will also ensure that I have, my .vsconfig file, sorry about that, right here. So .vsconfig is a way to tell Visual Studio, hey, I need these components installed in order to start working on this project. And if you already have that written, that's fine, because then you can use a winget configuration file to call that. You don't need to reinvent the wheel and do it again. And the vsconfig file that PowerToys has just kind of looks like this. It's in the root of the PowerToys repository. And then I'm able to use the desired state configuration file to include the vsconfig, get all my Visual Studio components, install Visual Studio, and then also enable developer mode. So I could do all of that at once, and it really streamlines setup when using a configuration file.
And so the end result is that you just run winget configure that file, and then after that's done, you're ready and up and running to run anything you would need to develop PowerToys in this scenario.
Yeah, exactly. And this installation is taking a little bit longer, so I think why don't you show your DSC, and we can come back to this after.
Yeah, let's jump over to my machine. So here, I actually use DSCs in a similar way, but I use them for my personal machine setup. So I have a setup folder that's just a Git repository of a bunch of .winget files that I have. And this is the first thing that I download on a new machine. And I can show you what it looks like. If I run winget configure I'm just going to run this one at the top that's all. So this is everything on my system. You can see that it's basically reasoning over, OK, what configuration details do I need to do? And it's going to check what's going to be applied. I'm going to say, yes, I want these applied to my machine. Hit yes, and it's going to start applying everything. You'll notice I have the search icon down here. I'm a bit of a minimalist, and so I turn that off. And you have taskbar settings here, Windows Explorer settings to enable hidden files, to enable text file extensions, and then as well settings like installing all of the different apps I might want, like Visual Studio Code, PowerToys, and more. And so in this way, after I run this file, my machine is now fully set up in the way that I would want it. And if you noticed, there's also this very cool icon showing down here, because I'm running some experimental features of winget. In this case, I'm running one called Sixel support. So Sixels are a new feature inside of Windows Terminal. Sixel support is a new feature inside of Windows Terminal. Sixels have been around. And Sixels are it's 6 pixels tall and 1 pixels wide. And you can use the input and output buffer to control those pixels. And you can show images directly in your terminal. So if I run something like winget show VS Code, I can get the icon of VS Code right here in my terminal displayed like text. And we have some other features here as well. So if I hit winget settings, you can open them up and take a look. Here's where I've turned on Sixel support to show the Sixel's progress bar. And I also have this self-elevate feature here. This is another experimental feature. And if I go ahead, I'm just going to peek into that file that I had of installing everything. And some of these files require admin rights. Like, for example, I'm installing Docker Desktop down here, which does require admin. And some don't require admin. For example, Spotify does not require admin to use. And so here I can specify what, for Docker Desktop, I want this to run in an elevated context. And for other install methods like Spotify, I want it to run in a non-elevated context. So I can have one script that's intelligently choosing, OK, run this as admin, run this as my user, run this as admin. And that way, I can install everything I want on a new machine and get it set up just incredibly quickly, which I think is really awesome.
Yeah, and then you said that's only one UAC, so you don't need to continuously wait for it to keep popping those up?
Exactly, just once at the beginning, which I think is cool.
That's really cool. And you mentioned that you were setting up Windows settings. I was setting up a repository and Visual Studio components and that sort of thing. But I have one more DSC that will kind of showcase the whole picture of everything that the winget configuration files can do. So we can hop back over to my machine. Before I jump into that, my Git did finish installing. And the reason why I wanted to show this off is, you notice at the top, when I type Git, it says, I don't know what that is. I'm not familiar with the command. One way that we improved terminal is that we've added environment path refresh. So I'm sure we've all been here where now we need to close this window down and reopen it to get Git in the path so I'm able to use it. But now that we've added environment path refresh, I don't have to do that.
A major pain point.
I know. There's a method to our madness of why we would install Git right now.
Yeah, live.
Yeah. So we've added that. It's on by default, and you can go try it out today. And now we can go talk about that last winget configuration file I want to talk about. So I have this one actually in a dev box, a Microsoft dev box. So the way that I get to my Microsoft dev boxes, which is a Windows experience in the cloud where I could just do a bunch of development, and then I can access those from any machine, which is really helpful because we test a bunch of different laptops and things, and it's easy when all my code's in one place. And I like to get there using Windows App. So Windows App is an app that shows all of your dev boxes in one place, and you can get it from the Microsoft Store, and I think it's a really nice experience, and it also acts as the RDP client, so it's all just a brand new experience to make dev boxes even more awesome to use. So in here, I can click Connect. I've already got mine open and ready because I wanted to make sure it was warm for the demo. So we're in my dev box right now, and I want to talk about this one last configuration file, which is specifically relevant to PowerToys. So here in this file, and I've already run this in the way that it is. So it's already installed PowerToys for me. And it also enabled Color Picker, the utility. And I also am saying for it to show the color name. And I've disabled Power Rename, and I've changed the keyboard shortcut for the Always On Top utility because I never remember it. So I made my own. And PowerToys, if you're unfamiliar, is a suite of a bunch of different utilities that just makes using Windows even more awesome. And the ones that we'll be using right now is the color picker, which I can enable with Win-Shift-C. And you can see I've got it says dark gray. I've got the colors there. And then Always On Top, which lets me keep a window always on top of everything else. It's aptly named.
It's in the name.
Yeah. So, and I said I always forget the shortcuts, and I forgot this one. Win-Shift-A. Perfect. OK. So that has set a border around my window, and now it'll always hover above anything else. So I can move focus to my VS code in the back, but this will always remain the topmost window until I disable it. But one thing I can do with this configuration file is I can change the settings of PowerToys itself and then rerun it. And I can do that by just changing the color of that border. So I'm going to use Win-Shift-C. I'm going to grab this color from my terminal prompt there. And I'll paste it in here at the bottom. So right now it's using the accent color of this machine, which is like a gray. So I'm going to turn that to false, and then I'm going to change the frame color, and I'm going to hit save. And then I can head over to my terminal and just run the configuration one more time. And what's really handy about these configuration files is that it's not going to reattempt to install PowerToys. It's just going to make sure that it's there, and then it's going to apply the other settings or make sure that those settings are there and then finish it off.
Right, because it's a state. So it's describing, hey, I want my computer in this state with these things installed, this settings, et cetera.
Yes.
And then you could rerun it as many times as you want. It's checking, am I in that state? If so, apply these.
Right. And it won't duplicate install anything or duplicate set anything. So it's finished. PowerToys has relaunched. And now if I do the Always On Top, I've got that pink border that I just set. So this is really handy for if you want to take the Windows settings that Craig showed, the repository setup that I displayed, and then also setting the apps and all the settings within apps. You can get set up pretty easily, all with just this one configuration file system, which is really handy.
I have one more setup thing that I really want to show.
I do have one last thing to call out that we always forget to mention.
Oh, please, yes.
I know that PowerToys, I showed all of these configuration file options, but PowerToys also has group policy. So you're able to, as your enterprise, say, I only want my enterprise to have access to specific utilities, and it's done through a traditional ADMX file. So that is something that we offer through PowerToys, and I wanted to make sure to call it out before handing it back to you. So over to you, Craig.
Thank you. OK, let's jump to my machine. I'm obviously a huge fan of the Windows subsystem for Linux, and we had some really exciting announcements for it today. And the one that I wanted to show is related to getting set up more easily on a Windows machine. So you'll take a look. I have a .wsl file here. We have a new WSL distro architecture. It has a lot of improvements targeted towards maintainers of WSL distros, but also it has some benefits for users of WSL as well. And what that means is I can download this file. I can just double click to install it, and I can install it from a network share or anywhere else on my machine. And now that it's installed, I haven't run it yet. And so I've installed it. Here's where it is on my start menu, but I haven't actually initialized the distro. What we can do is run, I'm going to target Debian, right, the distro I just installed with WSL space -d. And then I'm going to run apt update. And I'm going to run apt install vim. And what I've just done is before I've created my user account in WSL, I've done some setup work beforehand. So this is all running as the root user in Linux. And in this case, I'm just pre-installing some packages. And then now that I've pre-installed, set up my distro as I like it, when I run wsl-d-debian, you can see that I get the output here, the regular starting output. And so I can set up my account for the first time, and then I get my WSL output here. And so in this way, we're hoping that it'll be a lot easier if you have a script or you have any kind of setup scripts that you want to do before you're actually initializing your user account inside of your Windows subsystem for Linux distro. You can now do that with this new architecture. As well, this new architecture brings multiple new distros. So Red Hat is coming to WSL as well. And so we look forward to seeing more news in that area.
That's awesome.
All right, let's jump back to the slides. And oh, there's one more thing that I wanted to show. We just showed a lot. We showed a lot of different features. And one of the things of the point of this talk is to make it really easy to not forget or worry about this. You don't have to be worried about taking notes or anything like that. We have a link at the end that will show this website. It has links to everything that we've talked about. So there's everything that we'll mention today, you'll be able to go find links for, and we'll have it at the end. So definitely don't feel overwhelmed, because we're going to go back to the slides and show. This is a summary of what we chatted about so far.
Yes.
Yeah, and so we talked about DevDrive. We talked about the Windows app. Oh, and we also want to talk about sudo. So I'm going to jump again to my computer. One last thing is, if you've ever wanted to just do something inside of admin mode on Windows, on Linux, as a Linux fan, I'm really used to using sudo to do that. Well, now Windows has full support for sudo. That command actually completed. And so if I go ahead and run something like this command, which would require admin privileges, let's go run it without sudo first so we can see what it's doing. If I go run this, I get, hey, you can't do that. I can't go look at security events without admin. Well, I can just run as sudo PowerShell.exe, and then I can complete that command. And so this is something that's available in the latest Windows versions. If you just type in sudo in terminal, you will get a link to settings, or you can just search sudo in settings, and you can enable or disable this. So it's just a setting right here. You can turn it on, and you can configure settings like the window spawning in a new window, or I like with input disabled in a new line. And so jumping back to the slides, we also talked about sudo. We talked about GPO support, the new WSL distro architecture, Winget's DSC, desired state configuration-based YAML files, and VSConfig support. And that kind of brings us to our next major area. So we've set up the machine, right? Those are all the improvements to get your machine into a working state. And now we want to say, what are all the features that we have to help you stay in the flow, to help you do more while coding, and to help you while you're actually building your project, to help you basically maximize your productivity at that stage. Mm-hmm. So once again, this is all demos today, which is my favorite. We can jump back. And so I'm going to head back to my machine. And I'm just going to close out these windows and pretend that I'm starting my day for the first time. And so on a totally clean machine, if I'm starting up, one of the things I do is open my windows in a very particular manner. And there is a new tool in PowerToys that really helps with this. If you go to PowerToys, you'll notice we have a new section at the sectioning system on the left.
New navigation view.
And there's a new PowerToy here called Workspaces, which is my favorite new PowerToy. And if you click here, you can turn this on, and you can see there's a hotkey, Control, Windows key, and tilde. And if you open this up, you will see, hey, I have some tiles here. I'm just going to hit launch, and we'll see what happens. What's happening is it's launching all of the different programs that I would want, and it's tiling it in the sections where I would want them. And so in this case, I launched VS Code on the left, Edge on the top right, and then Terminal on the bottom right. And the coolest thing is because Terminal has a really rich command line support, I can do things like have multiple tabs. I have PowerShell. I also have WSL running Ubuntu on the top and Windows PowerShell on the bottom in the same split pane. So normally, setting this up took me some time every day. Yeah. But now I can just hit that button, and you can even pin this to your desktop and set that up. And so it makes it a lot easier. And setting one up is super simple. You just go to create new workspace, you capture what's available, and it will capture these windows in that order. And you can even set command line arguments for them here, as well as other additional arguments. So the first step of actually getting set up should be a lot simpler. And then while you're here and actually working on your code, so we are going to open the code from our lovely talk website, which is here. And Kayla and I really did code it. That's why it's a little ugly.
It's light.
And while you're working on this, I wanted to show some other examples of ways that we can use features in Terminal to help make your life better. So I'm going to go to that talk resources. And I want to show another example of Sixels to show an image here, because I have this splash.png that I want to see inside of my terminal really quickly. I don't want to open up in File Explorer and look at it. And so I actually forget the command to do that. But there's a new feature in Windows Terminal in Preview where I can use a snippet to recall that command really easily. So I go and I hit Shift-Control-P to open up the command palette. And I made a snippet group called Personal. And in this case, I made one called Render Image. And here, it's just, once I've hit Enter on it, it has placed this text into my command line in my terminal. And I can hit it, and I can get that image that I was wanting to query before right here. And so this is just a really great way where if I go here and back to the command palette, I can open my snippets pane. I have imported tons of these snippets, which have all kinds of useful commands like, hey, if I wanted to start a HTTP server in this directory, how would I do that? Well, that's the command right there. And they're all filterable and searchable and really easy just to be able to say, hey, during a talk like this, I can't remember what that image to Sixel command was and what the arguments were in what order. I can just use a snippet to really help prepare that, which I think is really pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And almost cooler than it, I think, is terminal chat. And so terminal chat, again, if you go to that command palette and do terminal chat, you can just type it here, toggle terminal chat. And you can see that I have a chat window in my terminal. And what's really great about this is GitHub Copilot is now an AI provider for this. So if you have a GitHub Copilot subscription, you can just use this right away. And I can ask it questions like, can you list all NPM packages installed here? And from here, I'll hit access token, which I'll fix after. Again, we're showing Canary stuff. And I'll fix it while you're on your demo.
OK.
And we can come back. But we're able to have a chat interface, and we'll jump back to it.
Yeah. And what's cool about that is then you could take the output when it does give you a command and save it as a snippet. And then you have even faster access to that. You don't have to continuously ask Copilot in terminal.
Yep.
That's awesome. And I have some snippets, too. Happy to share them. So I'm going to we're over here. Perfect. We're going to jump back into my terminal. I'm going to open terminal using PowerToys Run. So this is another utility that comes with PowerToys. It's a really great fast launcher. And I accessed it with Alt space. And here I could just start typing terminal. And then I'm able to find the Canary version. Well, you think I could find the Canary version? Well, I'll file this on GitHub, and it's pinned to my taskbar. So we're going to reopen this back up. And something I will note is when I relaunched my terminal window, it isn't a blank window with a fresh prompt. It has my previous content. And that is something we've added called Content Buffer Restore. And it tells me when this was restored from. And if you want to enable this so that you're able to get back into your flow quickly, you can go into terminal settings, and then over here on the when terminal starts, you can set it to open windows from a previous session, and then you can get that content buffer restore as well. So something I want to show off is actually part of DevDrive, and something that we've done to improve DevDrive. And I want to do this by opening another pane in my terminal. I know you were using a hotkey. Again, I'm not good with the hotkeys. I don't remember. But I do remember if you hold Alt and click on a profile, it will split a pane for you. So now I don't need to remember. And I'm going to head over to my desktop on the left. And I'm going to head over to my dev drive on the right. And one thing that I want to show off as well is the broadcast input command. So I open command palette with Control-Shift-P, and then I can start typing broadcast input to all panes. And now this is going to literally type the same thing on both sides. So this is helpful if you have the same folder structure on different machines like test, prod, et cetera, and you want to just get to your stuff faster. This is a really cool way of doing it. You can just broadcast input all at once and type it only once. So something that I want to show is the performance boost that we've added to DevDrive, and that's by us adding block cloning support, which clones, when you do a copy, metadata rather than bit by bit, so it's a whole lot faster. So over on my desktop, I have a thing called demo.vhdx, and actually I will show this in Explorer. I'm going to type explorer dot to open the current directory, and this will open 2 File Explorer windows for me, 1 for each. So I'll make sure, I'll do left and right here. So here on my desktop, I have my VHDX file that's about 10 gigs, and then same on the right in my dev drive, I have the same file, 10 gigs. So these are very large files.
And so left is NTFS, right, dev drive,
yeah,
REFS.
That's right.
Got it.
So the snippet that I have, which I actually like accessing my snippets, so we can open snippets pane this way, and it's going to do a split pane here on the bottom. For demo purposes, I'm just going to keep this closed and have it show up in command palette. So if you have been a user of Terminal for a long time and you have custom commands, the snippets architecture, the way that we built it, will just take those custom commands and make them snippets for you. And what's really nice is if you have Terminal or Terminal Preview, if you install Canary or a different version, Terminal recognizes, oh, I have a settings file of a sister type of mine. I'm just going to copy those settings over. So you don't need to reapply the same terminal settings if you want to get on the more preview bits that we have to get the latest stuff. Everything should just work. So the same goes for this command palette. I had this as a command, like custom command, and then we came out with snippets, and it just worked, and it was awesome. But I'm going to run the command copy very large file. It's very descriptive, and that's what we're going to do. And this is going to insert the text that I'd like, which is the measure, how long this is going to take, and copy the demo file into a new instance of itself called new demo. So how fast do we think this is going to be on the dev drive side? Maybe like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 1 second?
15 seconds.
15 seconds?
Maybe.
OK. We're going to try it.
So once you hit enter, both are running now.
Yes.
Wow. And the dev drive one finished already, 10 gigabytes copied.
Not even a second.
Right.
That's correct. And the NTFS C drive is still running on the left. It's still going to keep cooking. There we go. So 12 seconds compared to less than a second. And this is because it's copying metadata rather than doing bit by bit. So it's an instantaneous copy. And this is really helpful in scenarios where you're moving a lot of files around in dev drive and things like NPM and packages and all that stuff. So huge performance boost. And I love doing this little race side by side. I think it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm going to.
Let's jump back. So I was able to, I went in, and I'll show you exactly what I did. I went to settings, and I went to terminal chat experimental, and I just cleared my token and re-authenticated with GitHub. And now when I ran the query just to test it, you can see that GitHub Copilot does reply, hey, here's actually how you can run that. I can press on that, and I can run that command here. Let me make sure that I'm in the right profile with NPM installed, and we'll run that. Cool. So if I go here, run that command, there we go. And then now I'm able to see what is installed. And then I can ask it for things like, hey, can this integrate with awk to show, or with awk or sed, let's say, to show the version number. And because terminal chat knows that I'm running this actually in Ubuntu, it knows, hey, I can use commands like awk to show just the version here as well, which is really powerful because those commands are great. They have lots of complicated uses. And I find it as an awesome way to learn more about, hey, what are different ways that I could use awk to do the same thing as I could use sed in this example, which is really powerful.
Yeah. So I think this is about everything we have for inner loop.
For inner loop.
Yeah, let's head back to the slides, and then we can kind of summarize what we just talked about. So to add on to the feature list of our 4 pillars here, we've got a bunch of PowerToys utilities that are very helpful for just keeping you in your flow, as well as the improvements made to WSL and Terminal to just make everything a bit smoother, kind of iron out those paper cuts, and then the Windows dev drive block cloning with that instantaneous copy that we've added as well, because performance boosts are really where it matters in the inner loop, and that's something that we want to focus on. So lastly, we want to talk about improvements to the outer loop and how to just make everything easier when it comes to things in your job that aren't coding and everything else around it. So on the slide, we've got like building, deploying, testing, but then it's also just like using Windows and getting apps and using the clipboard and just like anything else that involves that's part of your job. So I think with that, we can jump back into a demo. We'll head over to my side of the house. And I'm just going to show a couple things that we've added to Windows that just make life a little bit easier. The first is going to be over in the For Developers page. We've added end task right here. And this is really helpful when you're developing an app, let's say, and it hangs, but then you can't get rid of it because then that white bar comes on the top and it's stuck. And usually you have to go to Task Manager, find the process in the list that's jumping around, and then hopefully you click it and then you hit End Task. Well, we made that a whole lot easier by adding a setting to the For Developers page where you can just right-click on the icon in your taskbar, click on End Task, and this will end the process in itself, rather than going through the Task Manager process of finding everything. Thank you. So that's End Task. That's just a little fun feature that we've added. And the last thing that I will actually cover is something that we're adding to PowerToys in a soon release. So I'm using a build from GitHub where everything's open on GitHub. Open source, and we've been, showing off this, this utility with the arrows and the zooming and
all
that,
So if you're demoing in front of your coworkers, or you want to show, hey, here are the details of my PR, like a really useful tool to highlight exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Or like recording videos or anything of the sort. This is sysinternal's Zoomit utility. And we partnered with sysinternals and agreed to deliver Zoomit through PowerToys. So this is my PowerToys build, custom build, and it has Zoomit here on the left in our new navigation tree as of last release. And we're delivering Zoomit as a new utility in a very soon release coming up. But this is something that we've been using the whole time, which is pretty fun. So that's coming, and we're really excited about that. I know you've got some favorite PowerToys things you want to show as well.
Yes, I talked about my favorite new Power Toy, which is Workspaces, but I actually have a favorite Power Toy, which is one called Advanced Paste. And so let's say that, this happens a lot, I find, to me, which is a lot of people will take a screenshot of an image and post it onto GitHub, saying, hey, can we adopt this README file, for example? And in this case, we have a README that is in French. And so what I can do is take a screenshot of this, and either I could type it out, or that's something I might not really want to spend my time doing live to type it. Or I can go into, Snipping Tool is great. Snipping Tool does have OCR up here. So if you see that action right there, I can copy this out and paste it there. But a really quick way to do it is using this tool called Advanced Paste. So if I go into PowerToys, you can find it here under System Tools, Advanced Paste, right there. And once you enable this, and you will need, in the examples that I'm going to show, you will need a ChatGPT or an OpenAI API key to do some of the AI features that we're going to show. But once you do that, you can take this, and I'm going to take that image that's on my clipboard, and I'm going to hit Shift Windows key V and open up an Advanced Paste menu. And you can see I have options like paste it as a file. And I'm going to take image to text. So again, there's only an image on my clipboard, and I can just paste that in directly as text here. So I can just extract that text really quick. And where it gets cool is I can copy this again, and I can say translate from French to English, the other way around. And now that custom request is going to go up to OpenAI and come back from a ChatGPT model. So I can get that translated. And then I can go here to PowerToys, and I can paste that text that's on my clipboard. Again, it's just text. And then I can paste it directly as a .txt file straight into my project. So it's a really versatile tool to be able for you to convert into whatever format you need when you're copy and pasting information. But here's kind of where the magic happens. And this is one of my favorite demos. What I'm going to do is go ahead and take that screenshot again. And again, there's only a screenshot on my clipboard. So if I hit Control V on this, it's not going to paste in the file as I wanted it. Instead, I'm going to open up that menu, Shift Windows key V, and I'm going to type in translate this file from, what was it?
From French.
French, thank you, to English, paste as a file. And so I put in one command in here as a string, and we actually use a piece of new tech called the semantic kernel to do this. And it has just done all of those operations that I did manually before. It's intelligently chained them together. So how did that actually work in the back end? Let's open up the logs, and we can actually see. So I'm going to go to App Data. I'm going to go to Microsoft, PowerToys, Advanced Paste, Logs. And then here's my latest version. And then here's today's date. And what we can see at the bottom is this is the actual command that we're giving to this agent. So you can think of it as, what if we had a paste expert who had access to all of those tools that I just used, right? They knew about all of these tools. And then a user comes in and asks, in this case, us, that was the user. We asked, can you take this image on my clipboard, translate it, and then paste it as a file? That's what we asked it. And we redact that information from the logs, obviously to keep your personal data safe. But that's what that content was right here. The assistant says, sure, I can do that. And then it calls this image to text function. So it knows, hey, I can take images and I can extract the text from it. It was smart enough to do that. And then it said, cool, I have text on my clipboard now. I'm going to take that text and I'm going to call the custom text transformation function. And I'm going to call that with the arguments, translate this from French to English. And then it goes, cool, I know I have text on my clipboard again. That's probably what it's saying right here. And then it goes, OK, paste that text as a file. And so it's able to chain these commands together and then give you one output. And so I think this is a really cool way where it's, even though it is a chat kind of running in the background, as a user, it's super seamless of you wouldn't even know that that was happening when you're using it. And the nice part is as we add more of these, I'll select some text so we can see some samples. As we add more of these functions, like pasting as file, paste to JSON and Markdown, a lot of these are offline and don't necessarily have to use AI. AI can be just smart enough to say, oh, I can call this offline function and chain them all together, which is awesome. I think.
No, that's
really cool.
Yeah.
And that is the main section of what we wanted to show for the demos today. So just as a reminder, we'll jump back to the slides and kind of summarize everything. Do you want to go through it all?
Yeah, sure. So we started all the way back about 40 minutes ago. We talked about winget, the desired state configuration, winget configuration files, how you can get started using all of those for Windows settings, app settings, repository requirements with Visual Studio, et cetera, how you can get started with that. And then we also talked about some new things in Windows. We showed off that end task feature and the snipping tool that you've been using, which you can get to with Windows key Shift and S. Then there's DevDrive with the performance improvements we've been adding there, and as well as sudo. And then we talked about DevBox very briefly. And PowerToys, of course, has a ton of utilities that are extremely helpful. And we are adding Zoomit in the very near future. And then lastly, our bread and butter WSL terminal, where we've got that GitHub Copilot now integrated into terminal chat, as well as the other little paper cuts that we fixed with content buffer restore and environment path refresh, as well as the fun snippets, seeing those images directly in terminal.
Yep.
So of course, have no fear. We've got a website that we made with all of the links to all of the docs, all of the repositories, samples, et cetera, with everything that we showed. So you can just grab one link rather than 15, and then you can get started once you get back to your machines. But I think with that, we're open to any questions if you have any.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Is there a mic?
I think right here.
I would just yell out and then Taylor and Craig repeat the question.
We could do that.
Yeah, so we'll take hands.
Yeah.
If you have hands.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. For DevDrive, is there any other magic besides the Defender and REFS, or is there something else special that makes it a DevDrive?
So for, the
Is there
question is,
Oh, yeah.
for DevDrive, is there anything else magical aside from REFS and the performance mode for Defender? There's one last thing, which is filter manager control, which allows you to tweak which filters are applied, or for the drivers. I'm also not the expert on this, but that can also give you a bit more of a performance boost by saying, oh, I don't need these filters applied, or I do. I think that's about everything for
Yeah,
now,
those
but
would
we're
be the main
actively
components.
improving. Yeah.
Sweet.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, on the right.
So for the terminal chat, does it have, can you give it the context of your current directory?
So the question is, can terminal chat have context of my current directory? Right now, by default, it doesn't read your current directory, and it doesn't read what's output on your screen. You would supply that as information. So you could just copy and paste it and put it in and say, hey, here's my directory. How would I do X, Y, Z? You would paste it in the window. So I can show you.
The question is if it can read the contents of a file as well.
Right. And so let's say I'm here. The thing that terminal chat saw was just this text here. And so if I wanted to put in any content, like, let's say I had this directory and I put this in and say, can you show this directory by, I don't know, last modified time? And then I put in that information here. I would have to paste it in. Then you would be able to go through that. So that would be the setup. Awesome.
Over here, over there.
Okay.
Hi.
Over here.
I have two questions that are kind of related. One, do you have a lot of people, or have you heard a lot of IT pros using Winget to deploy apps to many computers? And two, do you think the desired state configuration kind of provides a way to say, hey, I have a room full of 30 computers and I want them to all kind of be the same and have the same configurations? Do you think that's a good way to use that tool?
Yes, I think that's exactly how you would use that tool. That's the perfect example, and that's a good reason why we started working on that. But yeah, the mass setup of multiple machines is exactly why you would use a Winget configuration file.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Right here. Yeah, so the question is, for the Winget configuration files, is a document on how to write one? Yes, there are docs on the learn.microsoft.com website. There's a link in this link to that, and there's also a bunch of samples on the doc site, as well as in a lot of our repositories, like PowerToys and Terminal. We've got configuration files that you could just sample and then build out and play with afterwards. Yeah, of course.
Here's a peek of what those docs look like. Yep.
Question about when you copied that really large file.
Yeah.
First is to confirm, that essentially took up 0 bytes when you did that. And then second part of the question is, what happens if you modify either the original file or the copy of the file?
So it's only going to write just the oh, sorry. Yes, the question. The question was when you copy the file, the very large file with the dev drive, what happens when you make any modifications? And it was also 0 bytes. So yes, I believe it was. And when you make any changes, it's just going to make tweaks to those specific bits and in the metadata. So it's not going to change the entire file all at once. It's just going to be those specific pieces, if that makes sense. Perfect.
First off, love the session. You guys did great.
Thank you.
I guess my question is the workspace for the PowerToys. Are you able to share those with your team?
Oh, I can answer that.
Please do.
Let me. So the question was for the workspaces and PowerToys, are you able to share those with your team? The answer is yes, because I'm pretty sure.
Says yes.
Because in the backend, it's written into a JSON file, so you can just share the JSON file. I stuttered a little because there isn't literally an export button in the UI, but where it's saved, lately we've been saving on the desktop. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but wherever we're saving that JSON, that you could just share.
Awesome.
Over here.
Thanks for the presentation. I have another question regarding the Winget configurator. So the YAML files there you're deploying, excellent. You've got this nice deployment to all your laptops. What about updates? And what happens there? Is there a way of utilising? So we've played with Winget before. It does cause some fun when you're trying to get that to do the updates? And is it a secondary script? Can you use YAML file to do that as well? And actually integrate the updates so that you get those security updates for the applications and keep things up to date at all points in time.
So are you requesting automatic updates?
No, you treat it like you're pushing it out to the users, similar to giving them a code of configurator, like a Puppet or something like that. But in this case, we're pushing it out with the update included into the file, and that installs the latest version for them at that point in time, keeping the code the same, so they've got the same configuration.
Yes.
Increasing the level of the actual software package.
Yeah, so Demetrius, who's in the back, is our WSL expert, or sorry, not
Winget.
WSL, Winget. And the way the configuration files work, and he can shout if I'm incorrect, is when you define the app that you want installed, it will grab the latest version unless you specify a version. Then it will just it will ensure that that lower version, if you wanted, was installed. So if you are sharing this file around, it should theoretically grab the latest versions of all the apps that are specified.
Okay, and that should then increase the level of the application that's being pushed at that time. So it's a deployment, but also then upgrades that happen thereafter, that's all.
Oh, if you were to run it again?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
Okay. Clinton, your hand is, oh, okay. I don't believe it would run it again unless we have a command in there that says update to the newest, and I'm not certain if that's in there yet. We can chat with you after, because our expert's right there in the back.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, cool, thank you. All right, we can do one more. Oh,
So today there isn't like an easy necessarily, that does everything, but it's something that we're looking into.
it's high up on the roadmap. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in.